Hi guys, welcome back to exmolex. When I was a member of the Mormon church, I believed that I knew all of the reasons why somebody might leave the church. This was about 5.5 years ago now, but according to a lot of the comments that I get from members of the church, all of those reasons are still circulated amongst Mormons as the main reasons why somebody would leave the church. Somebody might leave because they were offended. Maybe a ward member or their bishop or even maybe a general authority said something that they disagreed with or didn't like, and they were so offended that they left the church. Another likely one would be that the person wanted to sin. They were more interested in drinking coffee and watching rated R movies than they were with following the gospel. So they just said, heck it, I'm gonna leave the church. Another reason they might leave that I actually personally assigned to some people that I knew was that they were mad at God. Maybe something really bad happened to them in their life, something really traumatic, and the person blamed God for this and decided that they were so angry with God that they were going to stop going to church. Finally, another reason that many Mormons believe people leave the church is because they were led astray by anti-Mormon propaganda. On that note, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, I want to share some of the reasons that people have actually left the church. I asked my followers on a couple of different platforms to just explain in a couple of sentences why they left the Mormon church, and I want to share those. For one thing, I want to compare. I want to see if any of the reasons people actually leave the church are amongst the reasons that I thought people left the church when I was a member. And for another thing, it's just kind of cathartic. Let's start with some of the responses on Instagram. I left the Mormon church because I didn't feel safe to be myself, because too many people in my life were harmed by it, because it was fake, because they were not honest with their history, because when my brother returned early from his mission, my family and ward scorned him, because I finally realized that my values and the church's values no longer matched, because it no longer aligned with what I wanted for my life or what I believed was morally right, because of church history, because my only divine purpose was to have children, because it's all a fraud, because my integrity would not allow me to stay, because I wasn't given the choice to find my own path as a child, because it is historically untrue and the modern leaders lie and are deceptive, because I felt lied to, burnt out from callings, and knew I didn't want kids, because it's not true, because I couldn't agree with the idea that a loving God would command a grown man to marry minors, because evidence suggests that it isn't true and there is no hard evidence otherwise, because it's not true and it's harmful to many people, because I finally admitted to myself that it was abusive and not good for my mental health, because I'm happier without it, because Joseph Smith lied, because I'm a better person without it, because it wasn't true, healthy, or safe, not somewhere I wanted my kids to be, because I was expected to stay in a community that hated me but didn't want me to leave, because the racism, sexism, and homophobia were deal breakers to me. I couldn't justify staying, because it's toxic and Joseph Smith was a disgusting person and a fraud, because it's not true and it actively hurts people, because I finally realized it was make-believe, because I found out they lied and hid the real history and it was bad, because it is a high-demand religious cult fabricated by a con man that manipulates people, because I could no longer justify belonging to a homophobic, racist, sexist organization, because I don't believe in its teachings, because there was too much information available to blindly follow, because they lied to me about everything and used those lies to control me, because even if it was true, it wasn't good, because I realized my personal values didn't actually align with the church's, because my dad came out as gay and I realized that queer love being a sin was a devastating lie, because it's demonstrably false, because my kids deserved better, because I felt lied to, because the church isn't safe for my LGBTQ child. I choose my kids every time, because they say nobody's perfect and then expect you to be perfect, because I realized it wasn't what I thought it was. There were a lot of answers in there that I very much related to. But I didn't hear anybody saying they left because they were offended or wanted to sin. Nobody that said they were mad at God. And I guess you could make a case for believing anti-Mormon propaganda. But for most people, we find out when we start researching the church more in depth, that anti-Mormon propaganda is really just church history. It's church teachings. Let's read some from Facebook. I left the church because I saw how it was hurting people and that didn't align with my personal values. I left the church because they don't care if you're safe. I left the church because I disagreed with their racist, homophobic, and misogynistic beliefs. I left the church because I discovered I'd been lied to my entire life about nearly everything the church professes to be true, because it doesn't align with me and my values. I left the church because the only thing holding me there was a sense of community and family, but their teachings and beliefs were not truly inclusive. This isn't only a white man's world. I left the church because the Gospel Topics essays confirmed all the things about the church that made me sick and was told not to learn about. But once it came from their own mouth, it was all over. Because I came to realize it wasn't true. Because I valued truth over being right, and it turned out the church was wrong. I left the church because it no longer aligned with my moral compass, because of the robbery. Tithing is immoral when they are sitting on the billions they are hiding. I left the church for a relationship with God over a relationship with religion. I left the church because as a true believing Mormon, I was on a lifetime mission to seek truth, and I found it. I left the church because I determined that it was all based on old and new lies. I left because I finally realized the church's doctrines and policies did not align with my values. I left the church because they insisted I was broken and shameful and sinful when I could see it simply isn't true. Because I learned that my spiritual experiences were not a logical way to discern truth. Because I hated the hypocrisy. I left the Mormon cult because its story and beginnings are preposterous. I left the church because it simply wasn't true. I left the church because no institution has the right to demand control over my thoughts, beliefs, or identity. I left the church because I got tired of them being okay with racism, sexism, and homophobia. I left the church because I realized it did far more harm than good, and they do more for profit than helping others. Because of the lack of respect to women and individuals with disabilities. I left the church because once I learned about its history, I knew it was false. I left because the church cannot provide transparency to their finances or history. I left the church because factual, historical information I discovered in my search for truth differed vastly from the narrative that was taught to me growing up and into my young adulthood. It didn't align with my morals, and then I found out it wasn't true anyway. I left the church because they lied, and no organization who preaches good morals should lie the amount they have. I left the church because I believe in being honest and the church does not. I witnessed so much harm from guilt, shame, and coercion that I studied to see if prophets speaking for God were anywhere near an understanding of demonstrable, repeatable scientific realities. And they were not. I left the church because it isn't true and it unraveled my world. It tore apart my family in the name of God and never takes accountability for its destruction and lies about the church's true history. Because they control everything in your life. Because of all the lies. I left the church because the elders couldn't take no for an answer. I left the church because I don't believe in doing things out of fear. I left the church because they hoard money instead of helping the poor and those in need. And they lie. I was thinking of leaving when I saw the incorrigible bigotry that goes on, but the final thing that broke my shelf was some of the more disturbing parts of church history, and I decided officially to leave. I left because expectations were high while honesty was low. Weirdly enough, it seems like most people don't leave just because they want to sin or because they were offended by something. If you related to any of these, let me know in the comments, and if you didn't hear yours, leave that in the comments too. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. Special thank you to my patrons for supporting the channel. You guys are the best. And extra special thank you to Doug Davis for supporting at the Demon tier on my Patreon. If you guys would like to support the channel, there are links to do so in the description below. Thank you for being here today, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!